Welcome to Jammin' with Jason Mefford, a show where we discuss topics relevant to chief audit executives and professionals in audit, risk, and compliance. We discuss the technical and soft skills needed to navigate the minefields of organizations. You hear best practices and practical advice for helping you advance your career, and we'll even talk about music, mindfulness, and psychology, because we can. So sit back and relax while you listen to the #1 podcast in the world for internal auditors, unscripted and unedited.
Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Kathy Gruver.
And I'm Jason Mefford. And today we have a fellow CPA. We were talking beforehand. I know we're going to nerd out. No, we're not going to talk about accounting. Don't worry, folks. We're not going to talk about that
seriously,
today.
Everyone went,
No, I got on the wrong podcast. No, but Mayumi Young is with us today. So Mayumi, welcome. Why don't you just, give a short, little background about yourself so people know who you are, and then we're just going to jump in and get going, because today's discussion is going to be amazing. That's Kathy's phrase that I'm stealing from her. But
Excellent.
Amazing?
Amazing. Okay.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to have a conversation. A little bit about me. I will start by saying though I am a CPA, yes, please don't hold that against me. I'm really here because I create the space where conscious innovation happens. And that's something that, may not be logical or reasonable, but if I share a little bit about my story, I think it'll make a lot more sense about why I care so much about raising consciousness on the planet and why I care about innovation and creativity. And, rather than be the one who goes out and solves all the world's problems, it's really about creating a space where we can harness the collective consciousness, the collective genius that's out there, and empower and support and inspire everyone. I have devoted the last 20 years of my life as a social entrepreneur. I've started 3 social ventures in the last 20 years. And I've been a CPA and professional accountant for over 25 years. And I started all of that when I was 3, of course. And, I really just care about inspiring and empowering individuals to design and live a life that really matters. I really do believe that tomorrow isn't promised. And we're here to express, really first to discover and then express our unique gifts and talents, and serve whoever we choose to serve with those talents. And so whatever we can do in our life to live that life, that's what I'm here to do and to accomplish. So excited to be here, excited to talk with all of you.
Yay. Oh, this is okay. So the first thing I have to ask.
Yes.
So you say CPA, everybody goes, yeah, okay, I know what that is. You talk about gifts and consciousness. People go, yeah, okay, I know what that is. Collective consciousness. For people who are not familiar with that term, how would you explain that?
Ooh, good question. So, I am from California, so I could go a little woo-woo here on everybody, but let me try to stay, I'm very practical and very spiritual at the same time. And so, for me, I do believe that there is this shared energy. There's different levels of consciousness or vibration, you could even say, in the world that exists. And we are all connected to that universal or oneness. And so we all have, in a way, we're somewhat tethered to this unlimited amount of information, of knowledge, of all the world's problems are solved in this collective consciousness. And I don't know if anyone's ever had the personal experience, I know I have, where you feel like you've just been downloaded with information and knowledge that you literally are like, that couldn't have come from me. And I almost always know that I got a download is when I'm like, that can't be true. And I sit there and I start to argue with it or question it. And it's usually, all at once, and it comes in streams, and everybody is different. Everyone connects to this universal knowledge, universal understanding differently. Some of us are very intuitive and we can feel things in our body. Some of us get downloads and we get this sort of knowing. Other people just have visions, so each of us are unique in our own ability to connect with this collective consciousness. And it's about really developing a muscle and it's like learning another language. If we were going to learn Japanese, we would, get trained and developed and learn how to communicate with these higher bodies of knowledge. I mean, there's so much about the world and the universe that we just simply can't understand. And it's just fun to tap into all dimensions and domains that are available to us.
Well, and a couple of other words that you used too, because you said creating this space, right? And I know, one of the first times I was kind of introduced to this, and somebody kind of said that, or another term sometimes people will use is, I'm creating a container. Right. So creating space or creating a container. I know when I first heard that, I was like, what the hell? What? Right. So maybe kind of explain that too, because that kind of ties in with this collective consciousness and how that all kind of comes together, how you kind of help people do that.
Absolutely. I feel like I'm a walking contradiction most of the time, right? In that the sort of the yin and the yang all the time, the masculine and the feminine. And it's this interesting harmonic dance and balance between the two energies. I'm spiritual and material. I'm an accountant, and yet I'm profoundly about, the ethereal world. And so, so when we talk about creating space, I would say that's in the domain of more, the easiest way is to think about it like the feminine energy. Anytime you want, it's like a womb, right? So a baby can, is created inside of a womb. And a womb is nothing more than a space. And in that space, new creations are born. So if you just think of the, how we're born as human beings, just that whole process itself, I'm always saying when I'm creating something new and, creating a new venture or a new business or a new product or a new service, that I'm in the process of giving birth to something new. So when you hold something that's important to you or something, an outcome that you're really looking to achieve in your life, think about it like you're pregnant with this new idea, and we give that new idea time to go through its own evolutionary process. And what's really beautiful is a human body doesn't have to do anything to make a baby. Well, give it some nutrients and, some basic, live. But it's so intelligent that a baby is actually created. And mostly what we need to do is give it the space. And so I think the closest analogy is to think about the actual creation of the human being in the womb. And anytime you want to give life and give birth to something new, let it go through that process where you're pregnant with it. And then, sometimes labor is hard and sometimes labor is easy, but it's almost always extraordinary when you actually launch a new idea or a new product or a new whatever. There's a birthing process, and then there's a whole new world that follows that. So I think that's the best way to think of creating space. And I'm just somebody who creates these wombs, these opportunities and openings for people who really struggle. I think a lot of people struggle with the, getting the thought from their brain into the real material, practical, tangible world where they can touch it and feel it and measure it. And that's the dance. It's like a lot of people walk around with ideas, but how do you make it real?
Yeah. Well, and Jason and I talk all the time about, what do you want? And if you don't know what you really want, then you can't create that space. It's like if you've got an empty storeroom, if you want to be a massage therapist, it's going to look really different than if you want to be a hair salon. You have to get the right tools for that thing, but you have to identify what you want first. And sometimes I agree with you completely, Mayumi, about the download thing. It's sometimes my brain, or it's not even so much the brain, right? It's just sort of the being. I feel like they cracked that code, like in that spy movie, and the computer goes, and suddenly all the information comes down. And sometimes that can help inform what you want. because you don't even know you want that thing until it suddenly appears in you and you go, that's what I've been looking for. So it's this interesting, you can get at it from different directions thing. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Knowing what you want sounds like the simplest thing on the planet, and it's
Sure.
actually one of the hardest things
Mm-hmm.
to discover. Mostly in the process of discovering what I wanted or helping others, it's literally figuring out what I don't want first. I can give you all the, well, I don't want this and I don't want, and to
Mm-hmm.
like unpeel the layers to get to what I really want. And I couldn't agree with you more. Being clear on what you want, it's like sending your order to this universal or collective consciousness, saying, here's what I would like you to send back to me, in a
Mm-hmm.
way. And another way to think of it, because I think analogies really help some people who are like, exactly how does this work, it's like great jargon, but what does it look like in real
Right.
life? It's like tuning into a radio station. And when you tune just in, if you're in between stations, you hear static, or you're in between two different songs. But when you tune right in each station has got different music. So we're all, on different frequencies. We're all trying, tuned into different stations. And so when you tune right in, you can hear it clearly. It's so clear. And it's just about constantly for us just tuning until we can hear the message clearly. That's for us. That's unique for us. And then you'll find that it's like the red car thing. It's like once you buy a red car, all of a sudden all the cars are red. So then you'll discover all the other people, you'll start to attract into your life, all the other people who are tuned in to the same radio station as you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, the opportunity, and I call it an opportunity, to actually design and create your life is a huge piece of that, is really understanding your own core values, your purpose, what you care about, what your passions are, and really and truly at the end of the day, what you want. And the ability to discover that, to me, is really a function of the quality of your questions. So the better your questions, the better your answers.
So give us an example of what those questions are. What should we be asking ourselves?
Depends on how close you are to knowing what you want. So some people are just like, I have no clue. And I'll tell you, so I'll give you a little backstory for me. Like, so I wasn't supposed to be like this on paper, right? Like, I was born in a single family house, single mother with a single mom who was born in Japan, raised in on a farm. She had to quit school in the 8th grade because her father passed away, and she was the eldest girl of 5 children. And when she came to the States, she barely knew the language. She worked for minimum wage at a rope factory and raised me. Like, I want to put a superwoman cape on her because I don't know how she did it. But in the framework of the culture that she was raised in and all that she sacrificed, the upbringing was, as most of us, go get an education. She couldn't. 8th grade education. I mean, for me to graduate from college that was success. That was life lived. So going through the motions of life is what most of us are taught and trained to do. And when I reached a certain point, so I did the college thing, I went and worked in corporate, actually public accounting. So I was with Pricewaterhouse for a while, and then I went into private industry. I reached a point in my life where I realized that I had no idea why I existed. I mean, I had gone so long where I call it sort of the default life. I had gone so long living the plan that was laid out for me, never once considering that I had a say, truly a say, in what it is I wanted my life to be for. That I just came to a point one day where I just, and it actually happened in an interaction. And you never know when life just sort of wakes you up and you have that sort of awakening. And so many people can talk about it, can remember the moment when they just sort of woke up. And so I was actually in an airport. I was traveling a lot. I was doing a lot of international finance and accounting, and I was in an airport in late 20s, and I met a woman and her daughter who was like 10. And she asked me what do you do for a living? And I gave the, patent, it's an amazing life answer. And meanwhile, I was pretty empty inside. I would even say I was dead inside. And I gave my answer, and I looked at this 10-year-old, and she looked, children are so innocent and pure. I swear she looked into my soul. I just was like, I felt like she understood that I was lying. And I wanted in that moment to take every word that I said back and say, scrap everything I said, go figure out what makes you happy, go live that life. And I didn't. And in that moment, I realized I have no idea what I'm supposed to do with my life. None. But I know one thing, and that's this isn't it. This isn't it. And just with that tiny infinitesimal pea of an understanding and awareness, I started from there and started over. And from that moment, everything about my life was created. So the kinds of questions that we can ask ourselves can literally start with just, why am I here? What gives me joy? We have to actually give ourselves, we're so busy adulting out here. It's kind of bananas. That we have to give ourselves permission to have fun and pleasure and joy. And especially, I'm in a very, serious industry, numbers and money and, make any mistakes, and we've sort of lost our way in a way, that joyful, youthful innocence and exuberance and play. And I really feel like one way that we can start to identify and remember, because a lot of us have denied ourselves the permission to want and feel joy and feel pleasure for so long that we don't even know what that looks like. I swear to you, and I've been doing this for a long time. I literally Googled, I got into a rut, and I wasn't like being really super playful in my life, which happens. Like, even with all this awareness, you can go unconscious and look up in a year and go, wait, what am I doing? What's happening here? And I literally, it was like a year ago or not that long ago, I Googled, what do adults do for fun? Because I couldn't figure out a hobby.
And what Google was like,
but actually, I will tell you, there were ideas. Try it, Google it. I mean, literally, I'm like, I need some clue here. And I happened upon something that reminded me that I really actually love movement and exercise, and I'm like addicted to things like Eco Challenge on Amazon, and and all these fun things where it's play and exercise and health and fitness and all that combined. Anyways, I digress. The bottom line is, it really, the place to ask questions is whatever is there that I think leads you to more joy. Start there. Does this feel good? Does this feel bad? Even just a simple asking, moment to moment, do I like that? Does that make me feel good, or does that not make me feel good? Which direction am I moving? And as you kind of move more in the direction of what feels good, then it'll get easier to ask more clarifying questions, more specific questions. I think staying general in the beginning is a little easier than trying to get super specific, especially if you really are kind of where I was, just starting with like, I don't know what my life is for. I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what makes me happy. And when you're that far away from your own truth and your own fulfillment, then start general and then start to narrow your questions as you go along. And I ask all the questions, the why, the what, the who, the when, where, and the how. So, why questions are really great. Why am I here? What is my purpose? What makes me happy? What are my passions? Who do I know that I can talk to? Who do I admire? Who do I respect? Where can I go to get more information? Where can I go to get support? When do I want to make a change in my life? When, how much of this am I going to tolerate? There's so many, you can ask all of those questions.
I'm going to be the contrary voice because I love playing this part.
Please.
But it's so much easier to just get up and go to work and come home and watch the news and drink something and watch Netflix and go to bed and not think about purpose. It's so much easier to just be in my humdrum, normal, not reach for too much. Because then if I don't reach for too much, I can't be disappointed, because then I'm going to have to work harder if I want to be this important, life-changing person. So I'm just going to stay here and watch Netflix. Well, what do you say to that?
So I think it's an illusion, and it's a story we tell ourselves that it's easier, because it's really hard to deny ourselves our true natural beingness. We have to, like, it's like trying to push a ball underwater, and we're constantly holding that ball underwater. It wants to pop up. And so we have to exert a lot of energy and force to actually deny ourselves our true, glorious, extraordinary life. And we become numb to it. And how we continue to numb ourselves to that is through TV, media. It's, through alcohol, through drugs, through, work. I mean, that was my drug of choice.
Yeah.
I had retail therapy, and then I had work. And I would just bury myself in one of the two. And, that was way I could kind of put my head in the sand. But the reality is, you still suffer inside. If you really got quiet and alone enough, and a lot of folks that have been isolated with the global pandemic have had this reconciliation with themselves of having to be quiet and still long enough to hear all that stuff that's been pushed under the surface. So many of us have been resigned and cynical, and we just have gone numb. Yeah. And this, I know I don't want to diminish the negative impact for so many people and what it's done from health and life and financial impact and everything else. So that in mind, I want to add that this whole global experience is a blessing in disguise for those who look to see that this is really a blessing. It's an opportunity for us to remove ourselves from the numbness, to start to feel that discomfort. And it's in that discomfort that we experience growth. It's when we're not sitting and numbing ourselves that we can actually discover ourselves. And, most of us have to get the cosmic 2x4 or the cosmic Mack truck to really appreciate life. I got it early. I was 19 when my mother's partner of 11 years passed away suddenly within a couple of months of being diagnosed of stage 4 cancer. And at that time, at 19, my understanding was that everyone who had cancer survived. That was my experience at that time. So being faced with the impermanence of life so early on was another one of my life lessons and blessings, which I carry with me every day. And the opportunity to understand that tomorrow isn't promised, and to get that message and to be reminded of that without having to have a life event knock us out, whether it's a health event or financial or relationship, divorce, and all these massive life altering events are generally where we wake up from the numbness. And if we can find and get proactive in our own evolution process, then we can be more gentle and we have a little bit more say over it. I always know when I'm not getting the message, when it's time to evolve and I'm getting a little bit too comfortable, is I start to get the taps. Hey, get moving. And I'm like, but I'm so comfortable. I work so hard to get here. Can't I just hang out here? Do I really have to go work on myself some more? I'm all coached out. I'm all ran out. I'm just like, leave me alone.
It's endless. It's endless.
Well,
and if I don't listen, I get the cosmic 2x4. And
I was going to say, you keep getting the taps until the 2x4 comes out, right?
And then if you really don't listen, then you get a Mack truck.
Yeah. And it's, what you're describing, again, I mean, we've had similar professional backgrounds, and you see people so much of the time that, they do what's expected of them. Mm-hmm. Right. And so they get told these stories that this is what your life has to be. And it doesn't matter about profession. You can still have fun and be living your purpose and be a CPA. Okay. But it's so many of us go through life for so long, like you said, getting the taps, and then eventually we get the 2x4 or we get the Mack truck. And that's why that term midlife crisis is there, right? For most people, we go through our lives, we get married, we have some kids, we have a career. All of a sudden we lift up our head at 45 or 50 and go, what the fuck just happened? Right. Yep. And we kind of get that 2x4 at that point. You were so lucky that, in your late 20s to have some of that and to have you start thinking about these things and moving your life and dancing through life differently. Because that analogy that you had of the ball trying to push it under the water,
it's a great one.
right? It's hard to do that, but what most people are doing, they're trying to push that ball down for 20, 30 years. And then when they're overweight, when they're addicted, when, whatever it is, you go through all these different things. It could end up being year two before they're like, why did this just happen? Well, because you've spent the last 20 years trying to push yourself down and be someone who you are not.
Yeah.
Right? That's cognitive dissonance from psychology. That screws people up. That's why there's so many people in depression and anxiety and with all of these things that are going on. And the sooner that we can start asking ourselves these questions like you're talking about, then we can let the real us out, right? And quit pushing the ball down.
Exactly. So we're running out of time again, because this is what we do. The universe is timeless. We have a time. Final thoughts, anything you want to add, any practical tip that you can give us just in the last couple minutes to help people get on this road?
Yeah, I would say, whatever resource calls to you. I mean, look for the clues. You'll be walking around, somebody will be like, yo, I think you should read this book. And then you don't get the book. And 3 weeks later, somebody else recommends the same book. That's a sign. Follow the signs. Start to pay more attention to things that look like coincidence, but maybe aren't. And they're like little breadcrumb clues. I would find answers everywhere. They're in random conversations in the grocery store line. They're in books. They're in movies. They're in conversations. They're in podcasts. They're everywhere. And don't be afraid, like there's only one place that I can go to get answers. I can only go to my spiritual or religious, centers, or I need to go to my coach. No, they're everywhere all the time, every day. And one thing that you can do that I think was a fun thing, if you want to start to stimulate sort of your awareness, is set out to have every day be a miracle. And you get to say what a miracle is. To me, if I believed that if I found $1, that was my miracle for the day, because that was money, a dollar more than I had that day. You get to claim the miracle, as small as it is or as big it is as it is. And if you look every day for something wonderful, something miraculous, something that makes you happy, and or can find gratitude for things, you'll start to see more and more and more and more of it. And then you'll start to experience life in a completely different place. The higher we can raise our vibration, and I would Google things like maps of consciousness and different energies. There's amazing books out there. Asking It's Given is fantastic. Anything with David Hawkins and Power versus Force. All these incredible thoughts of how you can systematically raise your energy and vibration. That's the work that we get to do in the world. And when I think about making an impact and being somebody who wants to make a difference, and I know many of you out there are like me, you know that you were born for great things. You want to have a massive impact, but you don't want to wear the responsibility of doing it for every person on the planet. The job of us is to raise our own consciousness, raise our own energy, raise our own vibration first. And I think there's something like, if we get ourselves up to the level of peace, we can impact like 20 million people on the planet just by raising our own selves. Put the mask on yourself first, and in the essence of doing that, you help others. So our job on this planet today is to live extraordinarily joyful, aligned, and fulfilled lives. Know thyself, and to thyself be true. You get to live this extraordinary life, and I really empower and encourage each of you to take one step forward today, designing a life that matters to you.
Yeah, I love it. And just I'll throw science in real quick, because I know you guys get to talk about that, so I get to be a nerd too. Our brain looks towards things that we're familiar with. Our brain moves towards things that we already know to be true. This is why so many women, unfortunately, stay in an abusive relationship, or we stay in a job we don't like. It's safer for our brain to stay stuck and unhappy just because we know it than it is to move forward. So if every day, and I love what you said, whether it's finding that $1, you go to pull the old pants out of the washer and you're like, oh my God, there's $20, or it's this moment of perfection of the connection with the cat or the sunset or a beautiful flower. If we continue to look at those things, we're going to find more and more of those things. That's what the brain does. It looks towards things that we're familiar with. So I love that, looking for little miracles every day and reframing what miracle means to you, is great. Jason, final word, and then we'll
Well,
Carry on.
the one thing too that I wanted to reiterate is kind of following the signs and the breadcrumbs, as well, and that they're all over the place. So everybody that's listening, here's a personal experience from me today. I woke up this morning with a certain thought in my mind. As we have been talking today on this podcast, it went, okay. So I didn't plan this. I didn't know what we were going to talk about today, but the universe is trying to tell me something, and I got my answer just from listening to this, right? So we're all going through this, and look for those little signs, because they're all over the place.
Yeah.
And the more you tune in that radio, right? Because I love the analogy of the womb as well. A woman doesn't have to sit there and think and do a bunch of stuff every single day, right? She just has to tune in, and the baby grows, right? And as we tap into that collective consciousness, as we tune in, do what we have to do to tune in, everything else is going to take care of itself. If you're doing the little things, right? You got to eat every day, maybe take your prenatal vitamins, but that's about all you got to do, right?
Yeah.
Try to stay healthy, and everything else takes care of itself, and it will. I mean, we've got 3 people on the show right now that are proof of that, as well. So hope that everybody continues to do that. And Mayumi, this was amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, great episode. So Mayumi, how can people reach you if they want to get a hold of you?
Probably the best way is just on my personal website, which is mayumiyoung.com, and it's Mayumi Young, Young.com. I'm a tool geek. I love tools and technology and things that help. So to the extent that I can suggest books or tools, I'm big into personality profiling, anything that's going to give us a little bit of an edge, that helps us along our journey. I take it all. I'm a consumer of coaching and mentoring and masterminds and all of it. So any place where you find resonance, I know, Kathy, I believe you've got training, and Jason, you as well. I mean, if you have resonance and connection with somebody, that's generally a sign, like, go forward, go connect with them further and learn more about how you can be closer and in their space, because each person creates a space. And that it lifts everyone's thinking and lifts everyone's consciousness. So I think that's probably the best way to connect with me. And if I can serve you or support you on your journey, it'd be my pleasure.
Yay. So MayumiYoung.com. Everybody head out, do that. I'm Kathy Gruver. I can be reached at KathyGruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at JasonMefford.com. So go out, start looking for those signs, live the best life that you can, and we'll catch you on a future episode of the Fire and Earth podcast. We'll see you. And that's a wrap. Thanks for listening to today's episode of Jamming with Jason. Keep on rocking in the audit world. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you later on the next show. If you'd like to earn continuing professional education for listening to today's episode, head on over to C-Risk Academy at ondemand.criskacademy.com. And that's C as in the letter C, riskacademy.com. Not only do you get a CPE certificate, but you also will have access to the video version of today's show. The views and opinions expressed on this show are that of the individuals and not of their respective organizations.